If you talk to America's farmers, they'll tell you these are tough times. A combination of high operating costs, low commodity prices, and lost markets has had devastating repercussions on the agriculture industry.
5 of my customers have committed suicide. That's how serious that this is.
Today, Arkansas farmers gathered to share their struggles with staffers from the state's congressional delegation.
Picture this. A tired Midwestern farmer standing in a field at sunrise, staring at towering metal bins stuffed with soybeans he can't even give away. Not because the crop is bad, but because the market has vanished beneath his feet. Across America, barns are overflowing, demand has cratered, and farmers are effectively watching their livelihoods sit and rot in storage. This isn't just a farm problem, it's a crisis with consequences for global food supply, rural economies, and even U.S. geopolitical leverage. So the real question is, how did we get here, and how much worse could this collapse become? It's getting harder and harder to ignore what's happening across America's farmland right now. If you talk to farmers from Iowa to Arkansas, they'll all tell you the same thing. These are some of the toughest conditions they've ever seen. And it's not because they suddenly forgot how to farm or because the weather turned on them. The real problem is a pileup of issues hitting all at once: rising costs, falling prices, lost markets, and a global trade mess that has left millions of pounds of food with nowhere to go. It's gotten so bad that some farmers are literally sitting on mountains of crops they can't sell, watching prices drop by the week and wondering how long they can keep going. One of the biggest problems right now is the cost of simply growing food. Farmers talk about fertilizer the way normal people talk about rent. It just keeps going up, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. Fertilizer prices have jumped to record highs in recent years, and when you add in rising fuel costs, expensive equipment repairs, and higher wages for workers, farming has become incredibly expensive. It doesn't matter how good your harvest is if every bushel costs more to grow than it earns. Many soybean and corn farmers are in exactly that position. Their crops cost more to produce than the market will pay. Imagine working all year, investing thousands into your job, and then being told the product you created is worth next to nothing. That's the reality on many farms right now. But what really pushed this crisis over the edge is something much bigger: the loss of China as a major customer. For decades, China has been the #1 buyer of U.S. soybeans. Almost half of all American soybean exports used to go straight to China. That single relationship kept countless farms alive, especially in states like Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana, where soybeans dominate the landscape. But thanks to the ongoing U.S.-China tariff battle, that relationship has collapsed. New tariffs and political tension have made it too expensive and complicated for Chinese companies to buy American soybeans. Instead, they've turned to countries like Brazil and Argentina, who have stepped in to grab the business America is losing.
We know that China buys, from government data alone, more than half of all U.S. soybean exports last year, with $12 billion worth of soybeans sold to them. Now, according to the American Soybean Association,
this year something happened that nobody thought was possible. China didn't place a single order for U.S. soybeans at the beginning of the harvest season. Not one. That's a historic drop. And when a market that normally buys tens of millions of tons suddenly disappears, you're left with only one thing: an enormous surplus. And that's exactly what's happening now. American farmers are sitting on millions of pounds of soybeans and corn with nowhere to send them. Grain bins are full, storage facilities are backed up. Some farmers are even paying extra to stash crops in makeshift outdoor piles, hoping they can sell them before the weather ruins them. But here's the catch: storage isn't free. Every extra day grain sits unsold. The farmer is losing money. Some are borrowing just to keep the grain stored, praying that prices go up in time. But the market isn't cooperating. Prices are falling fast, and I mean really fast. When China stopped buying, demand dropped, but supply stayed the same. And in economics, when supply is greater than demand, prices crash. Today, soybean prices are so low that many farmers can't even break even. Some say they're losing $2, $3, even $4 for every bushel they sell. And the worst part? They're still forced to sell because they need cash to pay loans, buy fuel, and keep their farms alive. This is why people are saying farmers dumped millions of pounds of food. It's not always literal dumping, like throwing crops in the trash, though some have been forced to destroy spoiled grain or plow crops back into the soil. Most of the time, dumping means flooding the market with crops at rock-bottom prices because the alternative is losing everything. Imagine being forced to sell something you worked all year on for half of what it cost you to produce. That's the definition of desperation. The trade war hasn't just hit farmers, it's hitting entire rural communities. When farmers make less money, they can't buy new equipment. They can't repair old tractors. They can't invest in their land. And that means companies like John Deere are feeling the pain too. With fewer equipment sales, factories have cut back production, which has led to layoffs. In farming towns, equipment dealerships are seeing more used tractors at auction, more machines being sold for quick cash, and fewer customers walking through the door. One Iowa dealership said they saw a 30% jump in farm machinery going up for auction this year alone. And this isn't just about money. For many farmers, this is personal, deeply personal. Farming is family, it's heritage, it's identity. Losing a farm is like losing a home, a history, and a future all at once. Picture someone farming the same land their grandfather worked, and suddenly realizing they might be the one who loses it. That's happening right now to real families across America.
It's happening at the same time that many U.S. farmers are warning that they are reaching a breaking point as unpredictable weather, rising costs, and fallout from Trump's tariffs.
Some farmers are angry. Many feel betrayed. They were promised that tariffs would help bring manufacturing jobs back, help the American economy, and help working people. But in their eyes, the opposite happened. Tariffs made equipment more expensive, raised the cost of steel and aluminum, and hurt companies that rely on those materials. They made fertilizer and machinery pricier at the exact moment when crop prices were collapsing. The government has offered some financial aid, but farmers say it's a band-aid on a much bigger wound. Temporary payments don't replace a lost market, and markets don't come back overnight. Once a buyer like China shifts to another country, they usually don't switch back unless something major happens. Now, a lot of farmers are asking the same question. How long can this go on? How long before small family farms disappear? How long before rural America loses the backbone that has held it together for generations? There are possible paths forward: diversifying markets, investing in domestic processing, improving trade diplomacy. But none of those solutions will fix the immediate crisis farmers are living through right now. Until something changes, millions of pounds of food will continue piling up with nowhere to go, and prices will keep falling. Right now, if you talk to farmers across the Midwest, you'll hear a mix of frustration, exhaustion, and fear in their voices. They'll tell you they've spent the whole year doing everything right, planting on time, battling weeds and pests, paying sky-high prices for fertilizer and fuel, and yet, at harvest, they're stuck with millions of pounds of crops they can't sell. And to make the situation sound even worse, people online have been saying farmers are dumping food, but the truth is a little more complicated. They're not literally throwing crops away. What's really happening is that farmers are being forced to store massive amounts of soybeans in huge metal bins, hoping that prices go up someday, somehow. It's like filling your garage with food you can't eat and can't sell, and praying the weather doesn't ruin it. That's the real-life version of dumping in American agriculture right now. But storage isn't a magic solution. Storage costs money, sometimes a lot of money. You need the bins, the electricity, the drying fans, and constant monitoring to keep the beans from getting moldy or infested. And grain doesn't stay perfect forever. If the soybeans get too wet or too hot, the quality drops fast, and suddenly the buyer pays even less. Some farmers have seen entire bins go bad, which means months of labor and tens of thousands of dollars gone. So when people say farmers are storing everything, it's not because they want to, it's because they don't have any other choice.
Network correspondent based in Iowa and has more tonight on the growing crisis there.
Farmers are waiting to hear the details of what could be a financial lifeline.
A few big companies like ADM have stepped in with something called free deferred pricing. Basically, they take the soybeans off the farmer's hands now, which frees up storage space, but let the farmer choose the selling price later. It sounds helpful, and in some cases it is, but it's also risky. If prices crash even further, farmers still lose. If prices go up just a little, they might barely break even. And if prices surge months from now, ADM benefits just as much, if not more. It's not charity, it's business. Farmers know that, but many still take the deal because they're desperate for any option that keeps them afloat. The reason all of this is happening comes down to something huge. The U.S. lost one of its biggest customers. For decades, China bought about 40 to 45% of all soybeans American farmers grew. That single customer kept thousands of farms profitable. But because of the U.S.-China tariff fight, that entire market has slipped away. This year, China didn't place a single order at the start of the harvest, not one. That has never happened in modern farming history. When your biggest customer suddenly leaves the store, you're stuck with shelves full of products and no one to buy them. And that's exactly where American farmers are right now. Meanwhile, other countries wasted no time taking advantage of the situation. Argentina, for example, received financial support and is now selling soybeans tax-free to China. Their beans are cheaper, their shipments are steady, and China is happy to buy from them. When you're trying to compete with a cheaper product that has no tariff-related drama attached to it, it's almost impossible to win. And that's the problem for U.S. soybeans. They're simply too expensive in a market filled with cheaper alternatives. Every day that passes, American farmers lose more ground internationally. This whole crisis has exposed a big weakness in the American agricultural system, something most people never think about. The entire industry depends heavily on just a few big buyers. When those buyers stop purchasing, the whole system cracks. It's like having one boss who pays most of your income, and the moment they fire you, everything collapses at once. That's what the Pilot News and other local outlets have been reporting. The system was built on trust that China would always buy from the U.S. But now that trust is gone, and the consequences are enormous.
With prices for crops crashing, farmers are doing everything they can to stay viable, even selling off equipment. Joel's Tractors in Strawberry Point, Iowa saw a 30% jump in farm machinery up for auction this year.
And it's not just the farmers who are hurting. When farms struggle, entire towns struggle. Local stores sell less seed, less feed, fewer tools. Machinery auctions are rising fast because farmers are selling tractors, combines, and other equipment just to get enough cash to pay off loans. Dealerships that used to sell brand new machinery every season are now filled with used equipment from farms that couldn't survive. And companies like John Deere are feeling the pain too. When farmers aren't buying new machinery, Deere has to cut production. And when production drops, workers lose their jobs. So the crisis on farms becomes a crisis for entire communities. That's why a lot of farmers say they feel betrayed. They've been told for years that America will always support its farmers, that rural America is the backbone of the country. But right now, they feel like they've been left behind. They feel like pawns in a political battle that didn't consider the real-world consequences. Instead of getting stronger, many farming families say their livelihoods are slipping away. And for many of them, this isn't just a job. It's their identity. It's their family history. It's land that has been passed down through generations. Losing that is like losing a part of yourself. So when you hear stories about farmers dumping millions of pounds of food, just know there's a much deeper story behind it. It's about a broken market, about global competition, about political decisions far beyond the farm, and about everyday people trying to survive conditions they can't control. These farmers aren't giving up. They're fighting. They're storing grain, negotiating with buyers, taking risks, and holding on to hope that the market will recover. If you drive through farm country, everything might look normal at first glance. The fields are full, the barns are standing, tractors are rolling. But talk to any farmer for just 5 minutes, and you'll hear the truth. Behind those fields is a crisis that's pushing people to their limits. Prices are crashing, debts are piling up, and many farmers are being forced to take desperate measures just to stay afloat. That's why you keep hearing stories about farmers dumping millions of pounds of food. It's not that they want to waste what they grow. It's that the system around them is collapsing, and they're stuck with more food than the market can handle, and far less money than they need to survive.
Well, we depend on the Chinese market, and the reason we depend so much on this market is China consumes 61% of soybeans produce worldwide. The rest of the world is 39%.
Take someone like Caleb Ragland from Kentucky. He's one of the farmers who has been speaking up about how bad things have gotten. Ragland says many growers are projecting huge losses this year, and he's not exaggerating. A lot of farmers are going into the red for the first time in their lives. They're taking out loans to buy fertilizer, to pay for seed, to keep their equipment running, and sometimes even just to make sure their families have what they need. Farming has always been a risky business, but now the risk is so big and so unpredictable that even experienced farmers are scared. Some say they've never felt this level of uncertainty. Not in the drought years, not in the bad crop years, not even in past market crashes. You know how people say farming is the backbone of rural America? Well, when that backbone starts to crack, the entire body feels it. Local economies depend on farmers. When farmers stop spending, everything slows down. Machinery auctions are packed right now because so many farmers are selling equipment to raise quick cash. You'll see tractors, combines, planters, machines that families worked with for decades, lined up for sale because their owners simply can't keep them anymore. And when the used equipment market gets flooded, even the businesses that sell new equipment get hit. Companies like John Deere are feeling the heat too. Fewer sales mean reduced production, and reduced production often leads to layoffs. So now it's not just farmers struggling, it's factory workers, dealership owners, truck drivers, and mechanics. The ripple effect is real, and it's painful.
Almost everything that could go wrong for Arkansas farmers did go wrong this year. And it's so bad that many are facing bankruptcy or even the closure of farms that have been passed down for generations. A dismal global market and plunging commodity prices mean there's little to no hope of breaking even for many farmers.
A lot of farmers say they feel betrayed. They thought the trade battles and tariffs were supposed to help bring stability or bring jobs back, but instead they've been left with heavy costs and fewer buyers. They feel like they're the ones paying the price for decisions made far above their heads. Many of them say they're frustrated because for years politicians have promised to protect the American farmer. But when the crisis hit, the help they needed didn't come fast enough, or didn't come at all. And now their livelihood and their legacy are on the line. For many farmers, losing the farm isn't just losing a business. It's losing a piece of family history, something that's been passed down for generations. Imagine being the fourth generation to work a piece of land, only to face the possibility of being the one who loses it. That kind of pressure weighs heavily on people. To be fair, the government has stepped in with some aid. The idea is to take some of the money from tariffs and give it back to farmers as relief payments. On paper, it sounds helpful, and in some cases, it has kept farms going for a little longer. But many farmers say the aid feels like putting a small bandage on a giant wound. It might help stop the bleeding for a moment, but it doesn't heal the deeper problem. Some farmers even say the payments arrived too late, after they had already taken on massive loans or lost crops they couldn't store properly. The real issue is that short-term bailouts won't fix a system that has deep, long-term weaknesses. Relying heavily on one export market like China turned out to be a huge risk. When that market disappeared, the whole structure collapsed. It exposed how vulnerable the U.S. agricultural model really is. Some experts and farm advocates are saying this should be a wake-up call. They argue that America needs to rethink its entire farm policy. Instead of depending on one or two major foreign buyers, the U.S. should be diversifying markets, selling soybeans, corn, and other crops to more countries around the world so that losing one customer doesn't destroy thousands of farms. Others say the solution might be closer to home. Investing in domestic uses for crops, like expanding biofuel production, developing new soybean-based products, or supporting local processing plants, could help absorb surpluses and stabilize prices. The idea is that if American farmers grow American crops, then America should be able to use more of those crops domestically instead of relying so heavily on global trade. It won't happen overnight, but it's a more sustainable direction than repeatedly depending on bailout checks. There's also talk about improving farm insurance programs, building smarter storage systems, and helping small farmers adopt new technology that reduces costs. The point is, There are solutions out there, but they require long-term commitment, not temporary fixes. Farmers need stability, not uncertainty. They need a system that protects them from market shocks, not one that collapses the moment trade tensions rise or one major buyer backs out. At the end of the day, what's happening on American farms right now is more than just an economic problem. It's an emotional one, it's cultural, it's generational. Farmers are proud people. They work long hours, they feed the country, and they rarely complain. But even the toughest people have breaking points. And if the system doesn't change soon, we risk losing something far bigger than soybeans or corn. We risk losing the heart of rural America.